Welcome back. How do you feel about 2022? Been a tumultuous year? 2021? 2020? Are we still in 2020? And the news just keeps going, keeps changing, big changes. And this year, we've seen a war in Ukraine, resignations galore around the world, particularly in the UK. Went through a couple of prime ministers. An energy crisis here and around the world, and political turmoil. So, does 2023 hold more of the same? Well, we often chat with our futurist, Graeme Codrington. He joins us now. He is, of course, from Today, Tomorrow Global. Graeme, good evening to you. People like you haven't had a moment to sit down. One of the big things is uncertainty. I mean, probably from 2019. There's also, you look in all democracies where you can measure it, a lot more anger, it seems. How important is that?
Yeah, I think you'd be a brave person to try and predict what will happen. I mean, try and predict what might happen this weekend, let alone what might happen over the whole of next year. But I think you're right. I think one of the big themes that we're seeing all around the world can be summed up in two words: angry people. We're going to see it in strikes. We're seeing strikes across the world. This is not just a South African issue now. And I think we're going to see industries that maybe we haven't expected to strike. Essential services, healthcare workers, and that just saying, no, we can't keep going like this. I think we're going to see angry people as customers as well. And maybe that's something that businesses need to be thinking about. The way you treat your customers in the next few months is going to define how they will think about you for the rest of their lives. I'm thinking particularly of the airlines at the moment, who you just see stories all around the world of people being treated very badly by airlines. Here in South Africa, it's price gouging, in my opinion. It's internationally, it's being stuck at airports and flights just being cancelled at the last minute. And airlines can get away with it at the moment because they're fully booked. But as soon as the competition comes back, as soon as people have options, they will remember how they were treated now. And I think that's going to go for politicians and all sorts of other businesses as well. So angry people, I think, is a huge theme of the world for next year.
Energy is becoming a big issue. Now, we keep thinking of load shedding. That's how we see it. Yeah. But it's part of a much bigger story.
Yeah. Well, just this last week, we heard news, and now we can have a bit of a good news story. In America, they have now proven fusion power. This has been something, you and I have spoken about this a few times over the last few years, where there's a place in France called ITER, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, that's trying to basically build a star on Earth. And so the technology is a tokamak reactor that gets more energy out than comes in, which would be lovely, wouldn't it, in South Africa? And it's now, they've literally done it. So we've known it's been possible theoretically. We're building these devices around the world to make it a reality, and it's now proven. And so it's not just about the shift to solar and wind power and alternative energies, but there are some remarkable energy advances coming. Now, that's probably not a 2023 story. So unfortunately, in 2023, we're probably still dealing all around the world, again, not just South Africa, with significant constraints on energy. But I think we are moving faster than many people imagine. And I am cautiously optimistic that we might find solutions quite quickly here in South Africa as well.
I mean, there's a strange thing to it, because when people look back at times of transition, like with electricity, like moving, from horses to cars, for example. Yes. People think it was easy. Oh, something my grandparents went through, or great-grandparents. Yes. But it wasn't. There was always this kind of conflict.
No, exactly. And Henry Ford famously said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said foster horses. And that's actually what happens in history all the time, is we see the ending of an era, whether it's the era of landline telephones or the era of horses or whatever, the era of fossil fuels. And our instinct as humans, our instinct as society, is to try and make sure the era doesn't end. So we do our best to sustain what should be passing. And then it reaches a point of collapse. I don't really want to use that word while we're thinking about energy, but we reach a point where we say, okay, now we have to do something different. And then something new always emerges. It always has. And I think it will.
Multi-polarity, and you're talking international relations now. I mean, in a way, it's about many people grew up in the era of sort of the Cold War era,
yes.
two sort of great powers or two great regions. Yeah. Then it was the sort of hyperpower of the United States, according to the French. It's all changed very much, and it's continuing to change.
Well, I think Vladimir Putin's goal over the last 25 years, anybody who's been listening to him would have heard him say this. Now, I think we're listening. He has said that his main goal is to make sure that America doesn't dominate the world stage. And he called that unipolarity, one country dominating everything. And his goal in his mind, 20 years ago or so, was that he would get India and China to join him in creating a balancing force with the EU sitting in the middle. And he called it multi-polarity. And I think that's still his goal. And whether Putin is the right agent to bring it into reality or not, I doubt anymore. But I think the concept that America no longer dominates the world, it doesn't dominate the world politically, it doesn't dominate the world economically, is without doubt. So either sometime last week or sometime next week, India is going to overtake China as the world's most populous nation. After the World Cup in the Middle East, I think we're going to see renewed look at Saudi and the other Emirates looking around it. Who do we really want to align with? I think in Africa we've seen, I think personally, we've been quite clever at not aligning. I think changes are happening in South America around that, and Southeast Asia is shifting. And so I think 2023 is going to be a year of changing allegiances. Those angry people are going to be voting in and out unexpected political parties and alliances, and we're going to see a change in the world.
And then also generative artificial intelligence. I know what artificial intelligence is. What's generative artificial intelligence?
I thought we should end on a bit of a positive note. In the last, literally the last few weeks, something called ChatGPT has been launched to the public. And if anybody hasn't played around with it yet, it's
very funny about the ANC.
Yes. I can imagine as a journalist there's some interesting things have been generated from it. But earlier in the year, things like DALL-E, Midjourney are programs that allow artists to produce art. So you type in some text, and it gives you some art. And it is remarkable. And now there's a whole lot of people all over our Facebook feeds putting AI-generated versions of their faces in different formats. That's what generative AI is. So it's using artificial intelligence technologies and supercomputer power to create artistic and creative works, whether it's words or music or art forms. And this is now, it has arrived faster than we imagined. A lot of people had thought this was a 2030s conversation. It's now real. And it's going to be fascinating. I think you'll find it very interesting in the world of journalism and reporting, because I think artificial intelligence is going to give human beings a go at generating content. And we're going to have to work out how we work out what's real, what's not real, and even what real means.
Graeme Codrington, thanks very much. Reality, virtual or not, is difficult enough for me. All right, Graeme Codrington, as you know, of course, is from Today, Tomorrow, Global.